Everybody shut up.
Good morning.
How are you, sir?
I'm good. Thank you.
Welcome to Bob and Doug Save You from Boredom right off the bat.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Yeah.
Pleasure to have you, ladies and gentlemen. Our guest, Scott. I don't want to fuck it up. Klopfenstein or Steen?
Klopfenstein.
Klopfenstein?
Yeah.
Okay.
It goes back and forth. There's a debate around the family of how it's said. You know.
I get the same thing with my last name. So.
What's your last name?
Ripper Dan.
Huh.
Yeah, it's an odd one. Other people say Ripper Don.
I was gonna say it was like is the option Don? Yeah.
Yeah, it's an odd one. So I first met you Aaron's birthday show on the Why Do They Rock So Hard tour in Fort Myers, Florida.
Okay.
Would that have been the Newfound Glory opening at the time?
Newfound Glory open.
I was at that show too. Then I didn't realize you and I were at that show together. We weren't friends at that point in time.
No, they were in Newfound Glory was all under 21.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the drummer Joe was hiding weed in his afro. And it was a fun show.
Why Do They Rock So Hard was the same time as basketball, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yeah, so they were being made at the same time, if I remember correctly. So yeah, I think they also kind of came out around the same time.
Okay.
Yeah. That's a blurry time.
I'm sure.
There was a lot going on, and we were not necessarily completely always on the same planet.
My memories of that night are you warming up backstage. I was like in your little group huddle beforehand and all that. And you gave me a Less Than Jake pick, which was funny because when I shot Less Than Jake, they gave me a Real Big Fish pick. And
sounds about right, yeah.
You're backstage, you're warming up, and the highlight of the show for me was you doing your version of Hungry Like the Wolf. That show, I had just seen Save Ferris like 2 weeks before.
Okay.
And at the time, the internet didn't travel like it does today.
Sure.
So in all of our minds, Matt and Monique were still dating. So when I met Matt that night, I'm like, hey, I met your girlfriend, and he wanted to kick my ass because they were no longer a couple.
Yeah, he's very sensitive about that, yeah.
Yeah, he was very, very angry at me, and I'm like, I didn't know. I didn't realize you didn't have Mo on your bass tonight.
It feels like we're two 40-year-olds rehashing Tiger Beat right now.
Yeah, it was really weird. But it was an interesting night. I remember on the way to the show, you guys literally walked down the main strip to a Kmart. And I'm watching you guys walk to Kmart, and I'm like, that's so funny. All these people are going to the show, and they have no idea that the band's just walking down the street.
Walking right by. That was very often the case with us for a while.
I think that's why it left such an impact on. I can't speak for him, but I speak for myself. Because you guys were the first band I ever saw live. Actually, the second band, I take it back. I saw The Cure first live with my dad in '96. But yeah,
that had to be fun with your dad.
No, my dad had no concept of what goth was. My dad was about 250, 300 pounds at the time, and he wore khaki high waters all the way up to his tits and a polo shirt, his socks up to his knees. He stood out like a sore thumb in a sea of gloom and doom, my man. But it was a wonderful show. Wonderful show. And I saw you guys were the second show I got to see, and that was St. Pete in Tampa at I want to say the State Theater is where I saw you guys touring with Why Do They Rock So Hard. And it's funny because that was the first show I ever got to go to by myself, where my parents felt comfortable enough letting me drive 2.5 hours away from home to go see a show.
If I'm not mistaken, if I remember that venue correctly, that's kind of a sketcy part of town.
It's very sketchy.
You know
very
what I mean?
Sketchy.
And that venue was sketchy. It was hot. It was hot as shit.
Yep.
But yeah,
it's still the exact same now.
I wouldn't want it to change.
It's exactly the same.
I remember the floor being like painted red concrete, but like flecks of the red had all dug up in that. It was awesome as a kid.
Yeah.
As a 17-year-old, that was my dream being in that room, man.
Oh, it was so big and boomy and like hot and like and since it was Tampa, like you would walk outside and want it to be cooler, and it was just as hot and humid
It,
and gross.
it's
There was
not
no
any
escaping it.
It's never any cooler.
I lied my way into meeting you guys at that show. I was in an AV club kind of thing in high school, and I started really getting into editing videos. I was really into Trey Parker and Matt Stone and Cannibal the Musical and really obscure trauma movies and stuff. And I met some, and I just moved to Florida. I was 16, and I didn't know anybody. I didn't know anything about music other than I liked The Cure. I liked Marilyn Manson. That's what you get when you grow up in the Midwest.
Sure.
And when I got to Florida, I met a group of guys, a ska band called the 29 Steps. Billy Nord and Mark Davis was the drummer. I forget all the members, but they befriended me. And Billy and Mark, in particular, I have memories of them. They're the reason I listen to Operation Ivy, the reason I listen to Misfits, the reason for a lot of things. And they're the reason I know what ska is. And that platformed into discovering Less Than Jake, playing downtown Fort Myers where we lived, and then discovering Real Big Fish. And it was a really fascinating show, and all I wanted to do for the AV club thing was, I'm like, I really want to meet this band. I'm going to this show. Maybe I could figure something. And this is pre-internet, so all I did was call the record. I think it was Jive Records you guys were on, if I'm not mistaken.
I mean, depending on when it was, so it was either Mojo or Jive. Yeah.
Mojo. It was Mojo. Thank you. I got the number for Mojo, just scouring the internet, what little I could find on there, and I called. I don't know who I talked to, but I basically let out this line of bullshit, like, I'm in high school. This would really mean a lot to me. It's like a program. If I can meet, like, I think I worded it like, if we could meet people that we really looked up to, or musicians or artists that we inspired, and we wanted to kind of include them, and we figured like we could use that as a way to get an interview. I just lied through my teeth to this lady, and she said, you show up at this time, at this date, talk to this person, you will have backstage passes, you will get to interview the band. They told me it was all cool, and I took my information, I wrote it down, I went and saw you guys. I showed up at exactly, like, I think maybe 20 minutes before the tour bus maybe pulled in, because you guys were like now just waking up, you rubbing the shit out of your eyes, and Matt just didn't look happy to be there at all. And your road manager, I forget his name, but I didn't realize that somebody also booked a local public access sketch comedy show. If I remember correctly, they were called the Sidewalk Cracks. And they would interview local bands, not local bands, they would do sketches around Tampa and interview bands that came to Tampa, and then interstitch the two together for like a half-hour public access show. And they were there legitimately to meet you guys. I just talked to somebody on the phone and took down the information and told that this is where you should be. Your road manager chewed my fucking head off. And then 15, because I wasn't supposed to be there. He's like, I don't know who the hell you talked to on the phone, but you're not supposed to be here. And he walked away. I was just like petrified. I'm like, this is the first time I venture out on my own at 17. And like, I fucked up royally. And he came back 5 minutes later, had like a silk blue with the fish logo, VIP pass with my name on it, tickets, and he brought me in, and he's like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to yell at you, it's been a hell of a day. I'm like, it's all right, man. You were really cool. Aaron was fucking wonderful. I had a similar thing with Matt. We didn't know. It was awesome. You guys gave us your time as best you could, and then let us watch the show. And much like him, like, I ran into Aaron just hanging. Went to go buy merch at that show. And when I turned around, there's Aaron in a bucket hat just hanging there watching the opening bands. And he just sat there and did this to me. And he just let me hang out with him for 20, 30 minutes watching the opening band. It was one of the coolest experiences of my life. And at that time, I was a nervous ball of wreck. I'm actually kind of feeling a little bit of the nervousness start to come back up now. But I was telling him before we started doing this, I'm like, you know what's going to be awesome about this is, like, when I met him, I was only a few years younger than him, but I was still a kid. I'm like, and I was nervous as shit, but now I'm an adult and I don't give a fuck. No, I still give a fuck.
I mean, we never grow. I mean, we all pretend to grow past that, whoever those kids were back then, and but they're still in there. They're still, I still get excited to hang out with certain people, and get excited at some of the same things. And I mean, it's just because I've got a little more experience and a little more knowledge about how things work and how I'm supposed to participate in things in a very useful way, it doesn't mean that I'm not still, totally interested in the things that I was when I was 13 years old.
That's kind of where we are. That's kind of what this show evolved into. We just started as two buddies we started doing this, and next thing I know, we've got people upgrade hip hop. Josh from Coheed and Cambria came on. You came on. Like, next thing I know, people are actually coming on, and it's kind of evolving into this thing where it's like we're two kids again, back in high school, trading mixtapes, trying to get each other into stuff, and now we're getting to actually talk to the people who inspired us, and it's just it's a trippy experience, man. I got to be honest, but I am grateful to have you here, man, because.
Oh, I'm glad to be here. I mean, it's interesting. It's funny because I mean, I feel like a Real Big Fish. Not until we were much later in our careers, not till like even after like Cheer Up, we were kind of always like, dude, we'll do whatever interview. Like that was just like we'll talk to people. That's what we're doing this for. Like we want to talk. We want to share what we're doing with people. We're proud of it. To turn down any kind, it's like to turn down any kind of interview or whatever it seems counterintuitive and counterproductive, for a person who's totally self-obsessed. But yeah, we just always, it's why, you could call the label and they would be like, oh yeah, just go to this thing or go this time. Because we were like, oh dude, if somebody called, like, of course we'll do an interview. Of course we'll talk about, our record or, the tour or whatever it is. That's their job. It's, if you don't talk about it, then, and if you're only like, oh, I'm only going to do these things that are reputable and make me look fucking cool. It's like, well, then that doesn't connect with people. And it's like, it also just creates that barrier, that thing where it's like, this is me, that's you,
Right. You can talk about these three topics.
Yeah.
And that's it.
I don't really, and I think we only got that way later because it's like, we had things we had to do during the day. And at a certain point it was, especially with Why Do They Rock So Hard and Cheer Up, the press cycles on both of those were really intense, especially for Why Do They Rock So Hard. I feel like, or maybe it was, I can't remember when those times were, but there were times where it's like we spent from when we woke up early in the morning, we would do a radio show in the morning, like early in the morning, like 7 a.m. We'd have to get up and like play a set in a radio station. Then we'd have to pack up all our stuff, get back on the bus, go to a record store, play an in-store, do a bunch of interviews, do our sound check, come back, do a bunch of interviews and do the things, and then hop on stage. And it's like at a certain point we were like, we can't sustain that and keep our sanity with 6 to 9 months out of the year on the road, while we're also trying to write and record records. It just became too much for us. So that's when we had to become a little more selective.
Yeah, because at that point of the day, that's like basically playing 3 shows,
Yeah. Oh, there was, yeah, on Turn the Radio Off, and then on maybe it was all 3 of them, on Why Do They Rock So Hard. But there were times, where we would do a morning radio show, a record store in the afternoon, and then do a show at night. And we did, like every single day in a row. And so you're playing a lot, and like you're trying to keep it fresh and you're trying to stay in shape. Aaron and I, who are singing our heads off, it's like, sometimes you get to the show and your voice is toast and you're like, well, that was stupid.
That was always one of the things I enjoyed about watching the dynamic between you two, is you could tell that sometimes it would kind of get to you guys, like going over and over and over again, and then the banter is it almost felt like that was your timeout where you guys got to just take a breath and kind of fuck with each other in the audience. I loved watching you guys banter. That's one of my favorite things about seeing you two perform.
Yeah, no, we had a rare, interesting chemistry that still to this day is like it's still there. He came on my Twitch show. And if I get drunk, well, I'll pass out on the floor now, baby. You won't bother me no more. She said, it's okay, boy, 'cause like he and I it was just, and he hadn't been, he's a little reclusive, and rightfully so. He spent a lot of his time out on the road and on stage. So it's like at a certain point, I think he's like, meh. Yeah, you spend so much time together, and he and I have had such an organically interesting friendship, because I was a fan of his when I first met him, because I wasn't in Real Big Fish at the very beginning, and then got to be in the band. And so I was like in awe of his songwriting and his guitar playing and the whole 9 yards. And then, we became friends, and then he, I gained a certain amount of confidence and understanding of myself and started exploring different things. And then we kind of went through a period where he and I didn't get along very well. In fact, we got along poorly. There were times, I mean, there was a tour where we almost didn't make it. Like, he and I would like quit on stage and like throw things at each other and like yell, fuck. I mean, we were so, I mean, it was brutal. It was a hard time, but we came through it, and I mean, we don't talk often. I mean, we text back and forth here and there. I love the guy. He's like a brother, we spend enough time together, and it's
Sure.
like, and you listen to a guy talk about, what he's going through, and he shares his music with you, and you share yours with him, and as long as you're open to the experience, yeah, it's like he's family to me. There were definitely times where it was.
We've been best friends for the better part of 15 years, maybe 20 years now, and been through it all, lived together multiple times, and didn't talk for 5 years, 6 years.
Something like that, yeah.
I tried to have sex with his ex, and that kind of...
that will do it.
And I almost beat the shit out of him at a club when I was 26 shots deep. And
Now, in defense, I was a junkie at the time. It's not excusable, but we all do stupid shit. The point I'm trying to make is is we've all been there. I know what it's like to butt heads. It's amazing to me where we are now, because I honestly never thought I would ever talk to this man again, let alone be doing a thing with him like this. Something so creative and so fulfilling for me personally.
I mean, that's the point of it all, right? It's all relationships. It's all about figuring out how we actually best function on this planet. Getting to be in a band, especially for a long period of time. I mean, I spent from 16 till 33 in that band, and spending like a lot of, I mean, especially once we hit the road at like, 18, it's like, every day you're spending with these people, and you learn so much about how to bounce off different personalities in a little microcosm. It's like it's safe and not necessarily safe, but I think the thing that became very evident at a certain point was it's like I got to learn how to coexist, right? That's the point for me. And it's like, and then it was like, oh, that's just the point, period. I got to learn how to coexist. I've got to learn how, how to figure out how to navigate people's, personal nuances and idiosyncrasies, and while not compromising who I am as a person. Past the point, I mean, compromise is inevitable, but not compromising past a point of uncomfortability, right? Where all of a sudden, like, I'm no longer like standing up for the things I believe in, whether artistically or personally. So that kind of stuff. But that's day in, day out. It's neat to be able to travel and spend a considerable amount of time with a concentrated group of people, because you could not, I mean, like, as far as the members of Real Big Fish, I mean, when whether there were 6 or 7 of us at a time, everybody was so absolutely different that it's like you got to learn so many wonderful things that people were reading, people were listening to, get into philosophical discussions. And then you also had major disagreements I mean, there were just some cats in that band who just were never going to get along. But it's interesting because there were people. So, like Tavis, our very first trumpet player, and I are spending a lot of time together because he's working with me on my new project, and like he and I kind of butted heads. Like, I think he just thought I was annoying and not very bright, which, to be fair, like, I'm a real hyperactive cat. So like, I'm not everybody's cup of tea. I totally understand that. And to have concentrated time with me takes a great amount of patience and a certain amount of tuning out. And back then, I mean, I was a chain smoking 3 packs a day and drinking and using excessively, and so you're trapped on a tour bus or in a 15-passenger van or in a backstage or in a hotel room or whatever it is. You're kind of trapped with this like whirlwind of chaos, which is just kind of what I am, period. So I get it, right? But now, like, we get along, like, we have such a, like, and we just, he's great. He's fantastic. And I think we have a greater appreciation for one another now that we've spent some time apart. But like Aaron and Tavis did not get along. And I don't think that that's anything that will ever occur. I don't think they will ever, nor does either one have a desire, right? Like, I want to get along with people. That's just my own thing. But it's like those two did not get along. There were other times where sometimes you just got to let that be. And you just got to be like, hey, these two cats are never going to get along. Give everybody their fair space as much as you possibly can. But then there's also like watching two people go at each other every night after a show and scream at each other while we're all traveling to our next day. How do you not get in the mix of that? That takes patience, that takes practice, and that takes a certain amount of like understanding for both parties. Going like, you know what? I'm not here to judge either side. I'm here to, like, if things get weird, play referee. Yeah, but it's like everybody's got to wake up and go to sleep as them. And, like sometimes it's just more about being heard and listening.
At the time when you guys were doing, like, let's say, the first we were talking about, Turn the Radio Off, Why Do They Rock So Hard, Cheer Up. Some of the lyrical content sounds like, when you talk about learning how to navigate personalities as a band, I remember how many members you had in that band at the time, let alone
I think it was 6.
But not just that, but like the success of you guys at that time. Were there? I'm only going based on what I'm guessing off of certain songs and stuff, like not certain songs, but just lyrics and whatnot. But were there ever people that tried to sow dissension between you guys as a group? Have you ever witnessed that, like background players?
Yes, absolutely. We definitely had some people who, I mean, this is not abnormal, by the way. This is something that happens in the music industry all the time. For some reason, I mean, you can talk to so many, I mean, especially bands with a lot of members or band with like 2 strong members, like, it's like there are, for some reason, it's something that people like to do is go in and they start to be like, oh, this is, I mean, I had it happen to me all the time, which was the craziest thing because like, I wasn't there to be the guy. Like I liked being a backup singer. I liked being Aaron's right-hand man. Like, I love that. And I love that position to this day. You know what I mean? Like, I'm doing my own solo stuff now. And as much as I love offering it up to people, like, it's not what I want to do. It's just I have this thing. I have tunes and I have a thing. And it's, if I could just go back to being a backup singer, I absolutely would. But fact of the matter is that it's like that. There's stuff I want to do and play and sing and this, and I got to be the front guy to do it. But yeah, there were people who were like, oh, you're. They would tell me that it's like this band wouldn't be anywhere without you, and I was like, that's not. First of all, I don't want to hear that because these are my brothers, and I love them dearly. 2, like that doesn't make me happy. Like that doesn't like I don't want that position. I mean, I get that many people are like, oh yeah. Well, you're right. I am the guy. It's like, I don't want to be the guy. I don't want to be the guy.
Yeah.
You know how much pressure there is being the guy? Aaron was under so much pressure. There was so much responsibility on that guy. And unfortunately, it's like the people who did sit there and they sowed the seeds of dissension and like separated us all, they were the ones that made that guy's life harder because they separated us. And we couldn't support one another because we were always worried about like whether we were getting stabbed in the back by the other person and all this kind of stuff. But, it's like, oh, he's like cheating on the money or he's trying to take power away or he tells me, like he doesn't like your music and it's all this, all your choices and all. It's just like, and you get these little whispers and it keeps the band separated. Like when we came into this thing, I wouldn't say we were all a solid unit, but I mean, you're talking like I slept on Aaron's floor as a kid. And I would listen to him go through and tell the story of writing the like while he was writing, turn the radio off in his head, and he would just start like saying the lyrics in a certain order that told this whole story. Like, and it was like, this was my, like, and like we would talk and like, and like this was like, yeah, he was my brother. He was one of my closest friends in the world. And then like, unfortunately, like people whisper things enough and like tell me that he says certain things or he thinks certain things, and like, I'm not necessarily constantly in my right mind. And the next thing you know, like I'm watching him out of the corner of my eye, and it's like, or he says something, because he's annoyed because he's thinking something else, and then I go like, oh, that means, it's like, there's a lot of that, and you'll see that. I mean, and it happens all the time in great bands and people. I mean, there's obviously bands of people who just don't get along. I mean, look at the Police, but
Right.
but like for some reason there is this trend in the music industry that wants to, because you're easier to control that way.
You see it at shows. Like if you're shooting a show, you see, like, so the group will be backstage and you'll see a certain group of people taking the basses here. You'll see the trumpet player over here, and then they all have people talking to them, and you'll see people looking around like people are trying to stir up shit.
Yeah.
And I've watched it live, and it's such a strange thing.
Yeah.
It's the perspective I think we have now as adults, man. Positivity is the only thing I want to put out into the world. I don't understand people who want to walk around with an anchor of negativity weighing around them just so they can pass it off to other people. It doesn't make sense to me, especially in an art form like music that's supposed to bring people together, man.
Well, I mean, I think that's the complicated part about turning something like music into an industry, right? You're wrapping it up in money, and well, I mean, I like getting paid for what I do.
Sure.
I have no problem with that.
Sure.
My family appreciates it. Like I have to be very, very careful because of what I've seen it do. I don't know if you've watched the documentary that's on HBO Max right now, which is about the Woodstock '99, right?
We have our last guest was Josh Eppard from Coheed and Cambria, the drummer,
Okay.
who's also a buddy of mine. And come to find out, which I hadn't known until we brought him on the podcast, Michael Lang, the guy who founded Woodstock, was his manager at the time.
Mm.
So he played Woodstock '94 on the main stage when he was 14 years old. And he's like, I learned a lot real quick about the music industry.
Yeah, like, so that's the point. Like, you watch that and you really like for me, that documentary created a retrospective awareness. And then I went back and I watched the original Woodstock movie, and it's like, dude, these guys, and I mean, like, I don't, like, they were, and I think it's the beginning of it kind of there. Like, it's the beginning of commoditizing a subculture.
Mm-hmm.
They saw that people believed in something and they could make a buck or gain some sort of renown off of trying to sell this subculture that was bringing people together, right? And so that's even what the original Woodstock was. Like, we paint it with such beauty and such, oh, it was this and that and this and that. And it's like, dude, it was these guys trying to, like, take something and, like, I mean, that's just what the music industry is. And while I understand it to a degree, I can only really feel good about it as long as there's like an amicable understanding of what we're trying to create. It's not amicable. The artists are constantly getting screwed, and yet it's like, well, because these people, they're like, well, if I'm not selling your music, I'll go sell something else.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, and this is a generalization, and I don't mean to say this is everybody in the music industry, and I want to be very clear about that, but I'm saying, like, the spirit of it has really become like, how can we take everything we can from these people who are, I mean, we're taking our day-to-day lives and smashing it into a thing that's becoming vulnerable, and we're connecting with people, and we're making necessarily pennies on the dollar for our work while somebody else is running a whole company
based on what you do.
Based on what we do. And while I totally understand, like, yeah, I mean, these cats, and again, and I totally understand. I mean, like, Real Big Fish had gigantic recording budgets, and we had, promotion, and we had all these things. I mean, some record labels would spend $700,000 to $1 million on pushing, this stuff, and it's like, next thing you know, I mean, we didn't sign a 360 deal. You know what I mean? We signed a regular old deal where it's like record sales would just go to them, and it's like, we get it. We have the road, we have merch, we have television appearances, we have all this stuff. But now record labels have 360 deals. So they take from your merch, they take from your tour, they take all of this stuff until they're recouped. And you're only making, again, pennies on the dollar. Right. So they've invested in you having a bus. They've invested in all of your merch. So they're going to make their money back. They're going to get their 85s, their 85 and you split, 15 split, and then your 15% or whatever it is,
it's divided by 6 people.
Well, no, that has to go back to them.
Wow.
That's how you're paying them back. So, like, you're not, they're 85%. They don't count towards your debt.
Wow.
Your 15% goes straight into their pockets, and that's to pay off your $1.5 million for your recording, for your living expense, for your bus, and all of this stuff. Like, this is what record labels are doing now, and this is just standard. This is the 360 deal, and it's like, and it's broken, and it's like these poor kids.
It's fascinating because every different artist we have on, I can speak for me. I learned just a little bit extra about this business that I've never been a part of. I've always just been a photographer doing it. But I'm like, I didn't know back in the day, like, okay, so you're selling your merch at a show, and not only is the record company getting a percentage of the merch, the place you're playing gets a cut of the merch.
Yeah.
Which as a kid, we never knew that when we were buying stuff.
Anywhere from like 15 to 20%. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah. And I was like, we never would have guessed that. And they're like, yeah, that's why everything has to cost so much, so we can kind of make some money off of it.
Josh said it on the episode we had Josh on. He said, you have an expectation of what it's like to be in a band when you're younger. And in the beginning, it's like that. You feel the creative writing process. You feel valid. He was talking about how on the first album they had thanks. He's like, that's not something you see these days with certain bands. But he was talking about, like, after a while, if you become a successful enough band, it's no longer about being a band to some people. Not meaning the bandmates, meaning the label, I guess. But he's like, it becomes a business, and then it changes the dynamic of everything.
It really does. Yeah, you get together as a band, you have to have somebody sit there and take minutes, and like, it's a whole thing. And I don't think it necessarily has to be that way, but I think we need to, and it's great because you've got young people now who have, they've got the tool. I mean, and in young people, I mean, people even, still in their 30s and stuff. I mean, and this is what I'm doing now, is it's like, it's all DIY. It's like,
right.
And figuring out ways to use crowdsourcing to your benefit. So things like Twitch or GoFundMe's and things like that, so that all you really owe is yourself and the fans.
Right.
And you may not get the huge, I want to say, I keep saying this recently, and I can't remember if it was Tom Waits or not, but it was a saying. It was like, it's not how many, it's that anyone at all.
Right.
And it's like this is a gift. I'm a custodian of something, and it's like, and people don't come to see me. I go to see them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I see this as like, I'm a civil servant.
I feel the same way because I am.
Yeah. Like, and it's like, I don't expect to be paid exorbitant amounts of money. Like, I don't need that.
Right.
But what I do expect is, it's like, I put in anywhere from 12 to 18 hours a day doing this. You know what I mean? Because I love it so much. But it's like, if I have an understanding and a relationship with the fans, I feel like they're going to, and treat them with respect. The opportunity to get treated with respect back is increased. right?
Yeah,
Like,
tenfold. I mean,
like, because I don't want to be seen as a commodity, right? I don't want to be seen as a fashion trend. I don't want to be seen as something that, and this, I mean, I'm trying to figure out the best way to say this, because this is actually a thought that just popped into my head. Like, I don't want to be something that helps. I don't want to be something that somebody uses to define themselves. I want to be something that someone uses as the catalyst to figure out how they individually define themselves. Like, I don't want to, like, I appreciate people buying my merch. That's how I live. Do you know what I mean? But, like, I would much rather it gives them something they feel confident to stand up and say, hey, this is me. I am this person, and I will speak my truth. Because that's what music did for me, until all of a sudden then we see record industries came in, and they, and you saw the explosion of Hot Topic and things like that. While I like wearing bands merch, is it's like, I will also, like, I do that to support the bands. And often, actually, most of the time, if I buy bands merch, I don't wear it that often.
I think most of us don't.
I mean, I'm wearing my own merch right now because it was clean when I grabbed it. But
I was literally getting ready to I know that's sold out on the website. Can I buy one of those shirts? And I'm like, nope, I'm not going to say that.
Yeah. No, you can. I mean, you can actually. They're right now. They're an exclusive on Amazon.
Okay.
We're doing. Yeah. So you can get them on Amazon.
Okay.
And yeah, you can get them on shirts and hoodies and all sorts of stuff. But because we were having problems with shipping costs, and so Amazon makes it cheaper. Don't thank you. Yeah, my good friend Nick Cohen, who actually designed the cover of my band, the Littlest Man Band, our album. He did the cover art for Better Bookends.
Such a good album.
Buddy.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to support bands. I think it's important, because it's also advertising for the band. So don't get me wrong. Like, I think that's great. What I like musically helps me get I glean perspectives, I glean thoughts, like, from all of these things to help create and to inform and to spark my brain so that I can start to, figure out, like, where I want my feet to stand on this planet. Right. But if I'm only a fashion statement, or something that makes me feel like I'm in with an in crowd or what have you, like, that's not, I want it to be all about, like, inclusivity, personal confidence, not like I belong to this, I belong to a clique.
Sure.
Yeah, not wearing a Misfits shirt because everyone else is wearing a Misfits shirt.
Yeah, like being like, oh, I really like the Misfits, even though I cannot believe how many times the word rape comes up in the lyrics.
Right.
Yeah.
It's bananas.
It is.
It's bananas how much Glenn Danzig uses the word rape in Misfits lyrics. Like crazy.
Oh, yeah.
Like, this was a conversation I just had recently. I was going through things. I was like, is it like, I mean, I would say it's probably like 7 out of 10 songs. It's crazy.
That's probably fair. I mean, I would say 7 out of 10.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That's a whole other topic. But yeah, no, it's a tricky industry. It's an industry for crazy people. And it's taken my wife a really long time to realize that it's like, if I could do something else, I would. But I can't. Because I think about this all day, every day. I dream about it. This is what's on my mind all the time. But it's a job for crazy people.
Did you ever watch or read The Other F Word?
I did.
Okay. Yeah. I love that documentary, and there's a part of that watching Jim be like, well, I gotta keep the dreams of these kids alive, applying Just for Men to his beard. And dyeing his hair black before the show, and I'm like, wow, that's so crazy. Like, that so much is linked to how we look. That's people's perception of who they are as a band,
Yeah. I mean, it's. Well, I mean, I look at it 2 ways. There's no way I cannot look my age. You know what I mean? I'm 44
Right.
years old. I mean, I take care of myself. I'm fairly active. I try to eat right. You know, I feel like this was the way, also in the ska scene when I was a kid. Is it's like I felt like most of the people that I dug, they weren't trying to hide how old they were or what they looked like. Like if you show up to if you're in a band and you show up to a show and you've got gray hair or what have you, and like or you're losing it or whatever it is, and it's like, but if you show up and you crush it on stage, nobody fucking cares.
No.
Nope.
They're
Not
like,
even
dude,
a
that
little.
guy is still crushing it. You know, like again, we're being sold that the only way to be accepted is to stay young looking. People who are making a lot of money are doing everything they can to separate us from our human existence. Because if we connect with being people, then we can't be sold with as much fear. But if we're told that we're supposed to be more than human, if we're told we're supposed to be something superhuman, right? If I'm supposed to look like Chris Hemsworth or whatever it is,
Right.
you know, is it's like, then the next thing you know, I'm afraid that my whole thing is caught up in that. And it's like, then I lose my authenticity. I lose a certain amount of ability to recognize myself and accept that it's like, dude, I don't look like I looked back then, but like, I don't want to be who I was back then.
Precisely.
No.
You know what I mean? Like, it's okay. There's the saying, right? Of, oh, if I, or youth is wasted on the young, right? No, it's not. There's so much pressure. There's so many restrictions. There's so much that young people are not allowed to do, and they have the most potential. The youth isn't wasted on the young. The youth of the young is wasted in restriction. They're told how to be. They're sold to more than anything, and they're constantly told that they're not good enough unless they fit into a certain box designated for their, like, space. And that, like, I've met some unbelievably insightful young people who are tired of feeling like they're not allowed to be them, but they're the ones that are celebrated.
Yeah.
It's like, here, it's your party, and you get to open all the presents, but you don't get to play with any of them.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that's a terrible analogy. But and then here we are, in our 40s, and it's like, I don't give a shit. You know what I mean? Like, because A, like, it's not going to change anything, and B, like, I care about how I look mainly because I have to be healthy to be able to do what I do. It's very physically exhausting,
Right.
And so, like, I eat right. I don't sleep. I've never done that though. But like, but if it becomes too much about like what I look like, then I start to kind of lose focus.
When we first got into you guys, like we were in our teenage years. Now we're all adults, and much like you, like I just don't give a fuck what people think anymore. We've talked about this on the podcast with other guests. I used to be afraid to admit to people I liked certain bands, and now I just don't care. Like that's the freedom that comes with age and perspective, and being able to having the chance to become a better human being, to learn
Right.
from the dumb shit you've done. I mean, you talk about the Littlest Man Band, and I got we better bookends. I'll be honest. I really don't like feel like every episode I go back to the well and talk about where I came from, but it feels like every guest we've had on the show lately is somebody who's really kind of helped me out personally in my life. And
Sure.
when you talk about, maybe not making as much money, but being more successful in other ways, I certainly feel that, like, especially with like the Littlest Man Band, that particular album I used to start my day off this morning, and I'm glad I did. Especially the song "It's You" is just I put it up on Twitter. I'm like, that's a song that if you really need something to motivate kickstart the morning, to kickstart your day. It's just a beautifully written perspective on like just appreciating where you are and who you are now. I spent 12 years numbing everything out and not giving a shit and cutting him out of my life and cutting my folks out of my life and cutting everybody out of my life. And luckily, I found my way out of that hole. And the perspective I have now as a 40-year-old, being able to do this and talk with people who write music that now like makes more sense than it ever did. It's just a beautiful thing. So I gotta say, for Littlest Man, I don't even know how to quantify it or put it into words, because I never thought I'd be sitting here talking to you, but like truly Better Bookends is such a wonderful piece of music, and I really hope you do another another just album in general. I love watching the few pieces of Twitch that I have. I loved watching you cover. I told him about this. He got me into a show when we were younger called Scrubs, and I remember the first season of Scrubs. Zach Braff did a lot of the soundtrack curating, if I'm not mistaken, and a lot of Colin Hay. If I'm not mistaken, Colin Hay was in like one of the episodes in the beginning of the episode, playing Overkill, which you played on a Twitch stream recently, I believe. Like, I got so jazzed to watch you play it, because it's just a song you don't normally hear. Like, that's what I love. I'm going all over.
Well, and that's what the song's about. The song's about kicking.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like it's about kicking dope, and like, you know, I mean, and that's what Better Bookends is a recovery album. It's about change. I mean, my whole thing is generally about change and metamorphosis, and the things that block us from that. That just tends to be what I write about.
You do it well.
Thank you, because that's the whole point. Like, you know, my grandmother said to me when I was very, very young, it's like, you know, the minute you stop learning, you should stop breathing.
Beautiful words.
You know what I mean? It's like that's it. Like, don't stop. Always be hungry for it. You know, and this woman is. I mean, and she's still an example of that to this day. You know, she's 96 years old. She's still kicking. She does her own thing. She's constantly curious. She's, you know, she just retired from the fire department like 5 years ago or something.
That's awesome, man.
She's a badass, and she's like, you know, she's this incredibly strong, brilliant woman, and you know, and as far as like a lot of the direction that I got early in life came from her, and we're, you know, we talked, you know, it's like, going back to a little bit of the like, you know, when we were kids, it's like, you know, and like we looked a certain way, like how unbelievably insecure were we? And the only thing that ever brought me a feeling of being secure was when I could be around the people who I loved and who loved me, and I could speak my truth, and they would listen, and then they would answer or partake honestly and openly and vulnerably. And then I felt like my feet touched the ground while my heads were still allowed to exist in the clouds, and I was a full standing human being. But anything else outside of that was like riddled with insecurity. Or when I got on stage, none of that shit mattered. It's like when my eldest first learned to walk, she didn't really walk, she just got up and ran. And we lived in this area of Brooklyn called Park Slope, and it's on a slope. And she would go running down the street, and my wife was like, stop, stop, stop. And I was like, all I would say is, be careful. Just be careful, because she's going to fall, and she's going to scuff herself, and she's going to scrape herself up, and she's going to be okay. You know, fact of the matter is that, you're the best. Thank you, my love. Lucky man. You do crush it. AD all day. Thank you, bub.
That was worth it.
Now, is that freshly pressed Cuban coffee?
No, this is actually the Littlest Man blend coffee. I have my own blend of coffee.
It's on a store.
Yeah.
I brought it up
from
on the website.
A friend of mine, his wife has a family-owned coffee company called Sir Albert's Coffee. It's roasted in Anaheim, and it's great. And we were talking, and he was like, "Would you want to have a?" I was like, "Have my own coffee blend." Yes, thank you. And you know, and it's the best. It's like, it's, you know, out of any of like Yeah, it's so great. I mean, I drink far too much coffee. And yeah, I love that. Like, I go into my pantry and pull out a bag of Littlest
Your
Man
own
Band coffee.
That's
It's like,
awesome.
it's brilliant and it's great. I mean, I like it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm hoping to get another blend out of it, but when we'll figure it out.
That's
So
awesome.
that's two artists we've had on now that have their own coffee blend.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's a good thing to have. I mean, it was really, for me, I was like, I have arrived. You know what I mean?
Like, I don't need my own signature model of this.
Yeah.
I want my own coffee.
Yeah. Well, I also have a mug too, so like, that we sell.
There you
Like,
go.
it's got like my face on it, this cartoon of my face that I drew, and then my signature on it, or not my signature, but it's just me, my name, and yeah, and it's great. That also goes. So part of the thing, which is why I like supporting through the merch, right? Like, I have made sure that everything that I do with my merch also, though, goes and helps put money in the pocket of the people that I love and are my friends.
Right on.
So, right, this helps my friends' independent business, and it's and I like that it's an all woman owned and run. I mean,
That's
I think
awesome.
he's the only guy who works there. I think it's all women mostly, but I asked my friends who are graphic designers and artists and things like that for when I want them to, so that I can then take that and put that into their pockets and things like that. Like, it's all about supporting independent business and people who got to hustle day in, day out, because I get it. Like, it's what I have to do. And, the thing that I think it's karmic, right? Like, if the community that I believe in, that can include anybody, you know what I mean? Like, I want to create a community that is totally inclusive and that's totally supportive of one another, because that's how the ska scene was and is. It's like everybody's looking out for each other, everybody's supporting each other. I mean, it's the way that I wish most of the music industry was. But and there was even a time. I mean, like, Less Than Jake was just in town, and unfortunately, I couldn't go see their shows. And I didn't know that they were going to be in town, and I had tickets to go see Pete Holmes. There was a time when people had this thing where they were like, Real Big Fish and Less Than Jake, rivals, and we were like, first of all, I had never met the dudes. We'd never really played together, but it was this like East Coast, West Coast thing. And it was like,
I remember
what?
that.
And then we like met each other, and I think we were all a little on guard because we had heard so much like, oh, Real Big Fish doesn't. And it's like, we met each other and we're like, oh, I love you guys. You guys are all great, super great band, great people. Like, this is the dumbest thing. And so that's when we started like going on tour together too, or like they would come to town, we'd see them, or we'd go and they'd come out and see us.
I didn't know that you guys were considered rivals. That's news to me. Like, to me,
Yeah,
it
was really
remember
weird.
that.
to me, it always seemed between Real Big Fish and Less Than Jake. Like, Less Than Jake was the Florida version of Real Big Fish. Real Big Fish was the West Coast version of Less. That's how I always looked at it. It never felt like anyone was better than the other.
But I think that's why people looked at it as a rivalry. You had
That's crazy.
you had Raj and Chris. You had Scott and Aaron, both sharing vocal duties. And I think people just looked at it that way, and you know.
I mean, I think we're also very musically different, but
of course,
absolutely.
very musically different.
Yeah, and I mean, and I love. I mean, one of my favorite things was getting to play on a Less Than Jake album,
Which was Gainesville, Florida.
So fun. When they asked me, I was like so nervous. I was like, and that was such a good. I was actually just talking about that trip because we had just done like a 3-week tour doing like secondary markets, and I went straight from that tour and flew to Chicago where they were recording that record, hung out in Chicago with Less Than Jake in the studio for like 3 days, and it was like. It was beautiful. It was great. And then flew home to Brooklyn. And, I was just like, I sometimes I forget that happened. And I was like, oh yeah. And I actually like listened to the album yesterday. One of my favorite things is it's the Buddha who said, any picture of compassion that does not include the self is incomplete. You know what I mean? Like,
very true.
I need to show myself compassion, and I will be far more likely to be able to show others compassion. Now, that doesn't mean that I spend my time really focusing on me, and I got to get all up into me, oh, look at me, you spend a lot of time with me, because that shit doesn't serve anybody. That's a real great way to really, like, support and spend all of your money in the self-care industry. I have to remember that it's like, whether or not I was shown compassion or unconditional love, at work, at home, wherever it is, because it's a thing that we are all intrinsically entitled to, and sadly, very few people receive it. And it's like, and at this point, the thing we don't teach is that, like, my goal is to teach my children, I love you unconditionally, so that you can see that you can love yourself unconditionally. Like,
it's a beautiful,
yeah, it's like, I have to love myself unconditionally in order for them to learn and see what that looks like. I got to let myself off the hook when I make mistakes. I got to stop saying things like, God, that was stupid. I got to stop doing stuff like that. Like, and I'm terrible at that kind of stuff. I do it all the time. And my kids pick it up, and then they go, oh gosh. And I go, hey, you know what? Let's make a pact. You and me, we're both going to try to stop doing that, because it makes me sad when I hear you do it. And then I realize, like, I should be sad that I do it. And I let myself slide. And if I don't want to let you slide, then I can't let me slide. And so we'll keep each other accountable. And so we do that in my house. It's like, I'll do something like, what an idiot. And my kids will be like, hey, don't talk about my dad that way. And so they'll do it. And I'll be like, hey, don't talk about my daughter that way. I love her, and she's perfect. She's great. And then my kids, this actually happened the other day. I was like, don't do that. You're perfect just the way you are. And she's like, Dad, there is no perfect. And I was like, yeah, that's my girl. Yeah. Boom! That's right. There is no perfect.
This reminds me of some of the best. Hearing you talk about the way you interact with your daughter reminds me of, like, the best lessons that Mr. Rogers left with me as a kid. To hear that there are people who still practice that with their kids. It is very, lack of a better term, it's heartwarming, and it's good to know that.
Well, it stemmed from. And this was really interesting. It stemmed from this idea of, it's like, I want to provide my children with the things that I felt like, A, were great about my upbringing, and B, the things that I felt like I didn't have. Like, I grew up in 2 different households. There were very different forms of parenting on both sides, and there's just some stuff. The thing that I had to become aware of being careful of was not trying to heal my childhood self with my children's childhood.
Gotcha.
That's where the rubber really truly met the road. It was more about me going, I have to heal me. And that is not about that's me making my kids' childhood about my childhood.
Right.
And then I don't see them.
Yeah.
I see the parts of me that are reflected in them, which there are just gonna be because they're my children. But it's like, then all of a sudden I'm making their experience, and then I begin to, like, try to heal vicariously through, and that's not how it works. That doesn't function.
It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, I mean, again, like, using past examples as guideposts, good and bad, are great. That's a good way to go. But if I'm expecting to glean some sort of, like, peace or healing from it, then I'm putting a weight on parenting that it's just not supposed to carry.
I want to say thank you a million times over, not just for being here, obviously for being here, but for everything, man. I genuinely, your art, your music has genuinely impacted my life for the better. So I appreciate that genuinely, man.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
If anything matters in this life, as far as, like, what success should be rated on, like, to me, you're the most successful. To me, you make an impact on somebody's life. You can't put a price on that, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Beyond measure for coming on. Thank you. I look forward to new music. Absolutely.
Welcome to being an adult.
Right?
I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you have many more. I'm happy to have you here. I'm happy to have Scott here. I hope to see more of you guys continuously throughout. And just thank you for everything. I love all of you.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful
All right.
afternoon.
Bye,
You
guys.
too, Jen. See you later.
Everybody got a podcast. Everybody is a critic, but nobody will admit it. Everybody going live now. Everybody want it right now. Click the link up in the bio. Everybody got a new line. Everybody is offended.
Oh, hello. I didn't see you there, but now I see you there. Gang, I am excited to announce the first ever Evening with Scott Klopfenstein Backyard Edition. That's right. On October 30th in Phoenix, Arizona. Tickets are on sale now. You can get them at scottklopfenstein.com. That's my name.com. Pretty easy to remember. It's going to be me, Scott Klopfenstein, playing music by myself, the Littlest Man Band, Real Big Fish. Who else knows what else? I don't know. Do you know? I should know. And we're also going to have a special guest of Loser. Not calling him names. That's what the name he calls him. So again, tickets are on sale, scottklopfenstein.com, October 30th in Phoenix, Arizona. Join us. I'd love to see you.
Everybody got a podcast. Everybody is a critic, but nobody will admit it. Everybody